Join us on our latest wood-fired workshop to see how we make these fantastic pastéis de nata. Hi everyone, welcome to Manna from Devon Cooking School and to this wood-fired workshop in which we are going to be making pastéis de nata, fantastic little Portuguese custard tarts with a lovely crispy shell and a soft creamy inside. We're going to show you how to make everything. So we're going to be making the custard, we're going to be making the pastry, and we're going to be baking them in the wood-fired oven. First thing we're going to do is make the custard, and it is a thicker custard than you would normally use for pouring over your apple pie. So a pot from the supermarket won't quite cut the custard. In this case, we've got to make a thicker mixture. So I'm bringing some milk there up to just to the point of simmering, and in my pot here I've got sugar, flour, plain flour, and a little bit of corn flour. So we're going to mix all of that dry stuff together. Into the bowl I'm adding 3 egg yolks, and I'm going to mix all of this until I've got a nice sort of homogeneous mixture. It will be very thick, but I just want to make sure I get rid of any major. I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but there is a skin just starting to form on my milk. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm going to pour this straight into there and then quickly mix it all up. And now this is going to go back into the pan and back onto the heat. And now I heat this, mixing all the time until it gets nice and thick. So I stir this religiously until it comes to a boil. You can see it forming some lumps here. Don't worry about those, just keep stirring. Getting right into the edges now and again. You can see how it's thickened up and clearing away nicely from the sides of the pan. And now it's nice and thick like that. I'm going to put it into a clean cold bowl. On top of that, to stop it forming a skin, I put a little cling film. You could use a beeswax cover if you wanted. And then this needs to be thoroughly cold before we use it. So I'm going to clear this away and we're going to make the pastry. So we're going to make the pastry for the pastéis de nata, and in this case we're going to make Delia Smith's Cheats Rough Puff Pastry, which I have found to be fantastic. It makes a really lovely crispy shell. So in my bowl here, plain flour, a little bit of salt, and I've added a little bit of cinnamon to this, and then frozen butter. I'm going to grate the butter into the flour, shaking it around so that the butter gets nicely coated with flour. I want to work quickly doing this because I don't want things to get warm and start melting. So I'm trying not to put my hands into the bowl because that would warm things up. When I get to the point where it gets a little bit dangerous, I leave that last little bit. Now to bring this together, I'm using iced water, again to keep the butter nice and cold so it doesn't start to melt. So I use just enough the water to bring this together. I don't really want to work it, so once it's almost there, I just lightly bring that together with my hand. And even though it's a little bit dry on the outside due to those last bits that I've picked up, I'm not going to work it because the moisture content will get sorted out when I put this to rest in the fridge. So it's fine if it looks like that, a bit gnarly, a few dry patches, and I put that back in the cling film, back in the fridge, leave it for at least half an hour. Matter if it's a little bit longer, because after a while it will have turned to a nice and much smoother looking mixture because the fridge has worked its magic and the moisture content is now nice and even. And I'm going to roll this dough out, and I'm going to roll it almost as thin as I dare, because that will improve our chances of getting this lovely crisp shell that we want. Plenty of flour in the process of rolling so I don't get any sticking. Really not a bad idea if this pastry rests before I cut it, because I have put quite a lot of elasticity into it. It will want to spring back, so I'm going to let it relax for a few minutes and then come back and chop it up. Whilst the dough is resting, we'll have a look at the oven. We'll get it ready for baking. I've heated up the oven, so I know that I've got a nice hot floor, and that's really important because I really want to crisp up and brown the bases of the pastry cases. So if I don't have the floor hot enough, not enough heat will penetrate. And then I've got enough heat in the mass of the oven to give me sort of 200 degrees or a little bit over inside the oven, which is going to be enough to bake the tops and give the tops some colour. I've got some embers, and I'm going to push those off to the side. That will allow the floor to calm down a little bit because it'll be slightly too hot. And because there's only a few embers there, I'm not too bothered about leaving them in the oven. So I'll push those out of the way with a heat deflector. If I was doing this in the steel oven down the garden, I'd certainly have the floor nicely heated up, push the embers off to the side, but I'd probably leave a slightly bigger bed of embers there just to make sure I had sufficient top heat. So I'd be burning the fire down, clearing the floor, and then fairly quickly going for a bake to make sure I had sufficient heat on top to give me the colour that we want. I'm going to put the door on the oven now to let the internal temperature come up and stabilise, and we should see this one settling, I hope, a little bit above 200 degrees. So the pastry has had a few minutes to relax. I'm going to stamp them out. Now I'm going to carefully lift these. Sit them in the centre of each tray, hopefully. And you can now see that I've got really quite a nice thin pastry. I've got 12 reasonably neat pastry cases ready to go. And into each of those I get creme patissiere, and I'm going to fill them reasonably generously, but if I overdo it then the custard kind of boils over and spoils the look. So we sort of want 2/3 full. Now here I'm going to go a little bit off-piste. I've got some tangerine conserve here and a little bit of something citrusy in the bottom of these. A little bit of orange just is fantastic. So just a little, half a teaspoon in the base of each one, and then custard on top of those. "12 pastries ready to go. Let's have one final check of the oven before we put them in. So the internal thermometer here telling me we're a little bit over 200 degrees. The floor thermometer deep under the floor telling me we are at 300. The infrared 320 in the centre of the floor, 290 at the back, 250, 60 at the front. And if I put my hand in at the back of the oven, we're a sort of 3, maybe a 4 Mississippi. So nicely up into the 200s, close to 250 at the back of the oven. We're going to pop these in. We'll be turning them around halfway through. Not too much radiant heat coming off the fire there. Nice hot floor to bake the crispy bases and a nice hot top to colour the custard. I'm going to set my timer for about 7.5 minutes, spin them around, another 7.5 minutes. They might take 15, they might take 20. I want to turn these around so that the ones at the back come to the front and vice versa. And I'm also going to spin them around so that if there is a hot side, we just even things out. And I'm going to set my timer for another 7.5 minutes. And there we are. And we'll see if they're done. Before our pastéis de nata come out of the oven, a chance to say thank you very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this and found it useful, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up, and we'll put notes and recipes for this on our blog and put a link to that below. And if you've got any questions at all about this or any aspect of wood-fired cooking, please do put it in the comments and we will get back to you. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. So we're going to take a look now after 15 minutes. You can see we've got some lovely colour on top of each of these and a lovely crispy base. So at the moment, as expected, these are slightly souffled, so I'm going to take these out, let them cool for a few minutes on a cooling rack, and then they are definitely best eaten whilst they're still warm.